Well, welcome to today's episode of the Medical Fitness Podcast, powered by the Medical Fitness Association and the MRF Institute. My name is David Flinch. I'm the president and CEO of the Medical Fitness Association, and I'm co-hosting today. Again, this is kind of part two of a two-part podcast with my two co-hosts, Jeff Young. He's a co-founder of the Medicine Rehab and Fitness Institute, as well as Thomas Hammett, who is the other co-founder of that. So it's good to see you guys again. How's it going?
Hey David, I'm doing well, and yeah, I was kind of chomping at the bit after the last one to keep this going, but we had to cut it off, so I'm excited for the part two and continuing this discussion.
Yeah, and just another good opportunity for the listener to get it in smaller bites. I think nice that we get the time to expand on this thought, and yeah, so excited to move on to the next set of topics in this discussion. Maybe I'll give a quick recap just to start us off on this episode. So we started the last episode really with setting the stage on why a medical fitness service should exist, talking about both how the fitness industries really think like health club, traditional fitness industries, as well as the chronic disease epidemic have both grown in parallel over the last 40 years, and how this has introduced the need for a more medically based fitness set of services and opportunities to exist. We talked then a little bit about how medical fitness programs are being run in the United States as it stands today. So what a medical fitness facility looks like, who are the staff involved, and where we're going to pick up today is on some of that how, and even then getting in a little bit more of what I imagine some of the listeners may find to be the most interesting part of this, which is thinking about how or what the medical fitness prescription might look like, and even some examples of what a best practice medical fitness program could look like too. So excited to jump in, and I'm going to jump in right away. So the last question in this how section of our podcast structure is to talk about technology and equipment. And maybe I'll field this first to David, but in your experience, what kind of technology and equipment are utilized in a medical fitness service?
Yeah, I mean, as far as technology goes, I think we could go in so many different directions because yeah, it's very important to have that. And I'd point first to some of the great industry partners that MFA has, specifically Technogym has always been a real big component, and just technology is in their name, and it's been part of what they've done for so long. When I first got started at Hancock Wellness back in 2011, that's we're talking 14 years ago, and technology was just starting to integrate more into the equipment and software, and they were absolutely a leader, and we chose them, and it really enabled, I think, some of various aspects of, especially within a medical fitness center, what was important to us. Tracking outcomes was is huge to have a system like that. It's the technology that's integrated into the equipment to help track outcomes is just huge. I mean, the old way of writing it down pen and paper is just it's unreliable, it's inconsistent, it's hard to do, it's hard to do the analysis. So and over the years, I mean, they're a very much a leader in putting new technology out there. So there's all kinds of things, and we get to see it firsthand at a lot of the centers that they're in, as I travel around the country seeing those. I mean, so and there, but I would say over the years, several others have kind of upped their game to do a lot of the same things. I was just on a call yesterday with Life Fitness, some of our people over there, and gone are the days of the analog only stuff. I mean, they're putting out stuff that also can bolt on to those types of machines. So if you don't initially have it, then you can do some of this stuff. So I think as far as equipment and technology goes, some of the big players in fitness equipment are realizing how important it is. The other side of that is the user side, right? So making sure that people stay engaged. I mean, even you've got games on equipment. Of course, you've got the TV and other apps. I mean, when I'm working out now on these things, it's basically like you've got an iPad or something, in front of you, and you're able to do that. So it's from an interactive and engagement standpoint, which all impacts member retention. It's important to people. So I mean, the communication abilities between members and staff, I think that's drastically improved. Some of our other partners like Jonas Fitness on the club management software side. I mean, zillion different solutions. I keep reading new things all the time out of them, and some others of just being able to have an open API that allows the integration of different apps. And so I mean, I can keep going on and on. Power Wellness, they just at our conference last year introduced their new app called Lincoln Tech, and it's helping integrate with electronic medical records for hospitals. And so you're seeing that on a variety of different software out there. So I mean, it's all, and sometimes it's overwhelming, right? I mean, there's so much out there. So I mean, to me, I'm always thinking, on my operator hat, I'm thinking, I need to have something that's very reliable and a trusted thing. You get a lot of these new companies. They're putting out what they say is great, and then it doesn't necessarily work the way it's supposed to. So to me, one of the big things is having a trusted partner on this. And so I don't know. I'll stop right there and let you guys react. Maybe give your perspective as well.
Yeah, David, isn't that just how technology works, where you get promised something and it comes out the box just a little bit different than you're expecting it to? That's certainly been my experience with tech. Where I want to start, I think probably a lot of the way that the medical fitness, and maybe what I'll say is think of medical fitness programs that are, I guess if I had to separate them into two types to answer this question, there are groups that are within a hospital or medical system. So medical fitness programs that are being run as like employees of or adjacent to a medical system where they may have access to the electronic medical record. And, I can tell you from my experience in working with those kind of groups, how difficult it is for exercise professionals to even just utilize the EMR if they're asked to document in there, how challenging that can be, because it's not built for an exercise service, these electronic medical records. It's built for medical office visits and taking, vitals and making prescriptions. So EMRs have come a long way in being more suitable for the medical fitness service. If you're doing a medical fitness service and you're outside of a hospital system, this would be the other group where not every medical fitness service needs to be run as part of a hospital system or as part of that, like within the medical group. You may not need to use the EMR. Even in physical therapy, we unfortunately are still a little bit back in the Stone Age in some places that we're sending and receiving faxes. And that may even be the kind of communication that's happening. I think in the future, there will be so much better virtual communication pathways, David, to your point, to get people in these services. But the EMR is a big part, and that's a space that's improving a ton. Certainly virtual prescription tools. And this may look like, Jeff is running a successful virtual medical fitness service that I'll let him talk a little bit more about after I get done rambling. But the other side of this too is just apps that allow you to prescribe via software. So to your point, David, pen and paper method of prescription is probably not going to be something that is as common in 10 years, even as it is now, as it was 20 years ago. You can, prescribe an exercise program as a physiologist that the patient has video access to see, what's proper form, to know how many sets and reps to do. The software itself even tracks how many you do sometimes by doing movement assessment or even just like checking off and saying you did it. This is like basic compliance kind of stuff, right? So virtual prescription tools are a big deal. Automated testing tools are a big one for us. So David mentioned we're going to try to get Jason Jones on this podcast here pretty soon to talk to us about some of what Technogym's doing. We are largely a Technogym client at Pinnacle, and there's some things that they've set up, particularly like body composition testing, that integrates straight into the platform that the patient uses for their prescription. So they see both the results and the exercise prescription in the same place. And this has the ability for us to, to take that data and make meaningful decisions with it as the fitness professional that, again, are not sitting down on papers. So automated testing tools, whether it's body composition or taking blood pressure, certainly like we've got a really cool piece of resistance training equipment. It's actually a circuit where we do strength testing that is a true like peak force production in 1 rep max. That's all done by the equipment. And David, you were talking about sitting down and playing a game kind of thing. Like these things are super fun. Like people that don't think they like exercise sit down and essentially it's like playing a game, right? Just one of the things that if you build a program that's more tailored towards that tech side in that way, it can be really positive from an engagement perspective. And I guess the last thing I would talk about here is wearables. Just what you wear on your wrist can give you meaningful feedback on the physical activity and exercise you're doing. I think still there's a big opportunity. Wearables are not the end game for most people because there's still a knowledge deficit. We talked about this last time, right? Like the data you're getting is only as useful as your understanding and your ability to use it to set goals. Those wearables are a tool. And for a lot of people, the tool itself isn't probably the most, it's not the endpoint for where you can get the benefit out of those wearable tools. So that's where I'll stop on that question and, pitch to Jeff and see if he has anything he wants to add.
Yeah, I have to say that as you both know, I was going to pass on this question because I don't have a whole lot of experience. But after listening to both of you, I'm going to go on for about the next 45 minutes. No, I'm just kidding. But no, it was really interesting to listen to both of you because it brought back that, oh, you know what, maybe I actually do have some experience. And kind of just touching real quick on both of your points. Like I don't have much experience or any experience really from like an operator standpoint, but from an employee standpoint, um, without a doubt, Thomas, the EHR and and how it's tough for exercise specialists to be able to navigate that stuff. And I remember how unbelievably helpful it was when I was at Mount Sinai to be able to have access to that. And yet at the same time, it was tough to navigate. And so it was kind of like these two things at the same time. I was so glad to be able to go into the notes and look at what was happening and get information on the patient that I haven't even met yet. They've been referred, but I'm getting ready to meet them as part of the initial consultation. So helpful, but at the same time, it was like looking at something that was just really tough to navigate. So I can definitely relate to that. Some of your comments about from a user perspective, I'm more of a strength, resistance training guy than I am a cardio guy. And listeners, don't get mad at me. I'm all about cardio. It's just personally, I would rather do the resistance training. But in any case, but yeah, being able to sit on these machines and it's, all of a sudden it's a game, it absolutely makes it much more engaging and stuff like that. And one last thing I'll say before I get into the virtual stuff is that yeah, at Mount Sinai, we did analog. And then we'd hand the sheets at the end of the sessions to the person at the front desk, and they would scan them into the system. And so at least they had record of what we were doing in case, someone came back and said they got hurt or something like that. But I can totally see that from a data collection standpoint and being, it just, yeah, that needs to, and hopefully it already is just no longer something that's being used. So, but in any case, the point is that it was really cool to be able to listen to your perspectives and realize that, oh yeah, I absolutely can relate to some of this stuff. But to your point, Thomas, the perspective I come from is virtual medical fitness services. And I just think that this is really important for every single, well, nearly every clinician on this planet or in this country to be aware of, because during my 10 years in this Mount Sinai system, I came to realize that with a lot of the referrals, and I actually, in my experience, it was with the majority of the patient referrals who were coming from cardiology, family medicine, internal medicine, physical therapy, physiatry, a wide spectrum. The most of them actually weren't looking for to work with a personal trainer for the long term. A lot of times it was a barrier to referral because when they get the the ref- basically when the clinician said, "Hey, I want you to work with Jeff or one of the other staff members," they'd see it as, a financial decision that they need to make. And I can't afford this. And they weren't thinking about other options. And it was during the pandemic that the light bulb went off in my head. And I realized, everything that I did at Mount Sinai, I can do virtually, with the exception of actually be there, in front of the person. But otherwise, I can build a medical fitness uh, eh, from like a private practice standpoint, not from a hospital system standpoint, but the protocols, the procedures, the fee schedule, the in services, the things that you would do in person, I can do most of them virtually. And so that's the reason why I created medical fitness services, because the way I think about it is that this should be on the à la carte for clinicians, because you're going to capture a subset of your patient population um, by offering something like this. For those who either can't afford the 1 or 2 days a week ongoing, or for the next 6 months or a year, or whatever, with a personal trainer. And also just it makes it more accessible from a scheduling standpoint. And it's just a cheaper option, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the reason why through the MRF Institute, I offer virtual medical fitness services, again, because it's cheaper, it's more accessible. And really the point, or the way I go about it, is to create an informed consumer, and then use that, because a lot of the patients who were referred to me at Mount, again, using Mount Sinai as a point of reference, part of the reason why they weren't looking for a trainer long term, and again, I'm not talking about all of them, but I am talking about many of them, is because they just want to know how to do things the right way. They just want to know how to, help me design a clinically safe. Now, they weren't using that phrase, but help me design a clinically safe program that's going to take my conditions into consideration, teach me proper form, and then I'm going to go off on my own when I feel comfortable. And typically that was after 10, 20, 30 sessions or so. And that's about how long we keep them, and they'd be gone. Now, with that said, I could see David staring daggers at me. No, I'm just kidding. But I would imagine that what might be going on in your mind is, well, we can offer other things as well, and to keep them in the system. And I would agree with that 100%. We just didn't do that at Mount Sinai. We were not good at that. So I don't want to act like there isn't ways to keep patients engaged and in the system. I'm just saying that this is a potential. This will just help capture another subset of the population, that in a different way.
Yeah, I actually think you're absolutely right, and really in the world that we live in, you need to have a variety of options for people, because there is not a one size fits all. There are so many different facets of what people are looking for, and so if you're only offering a narrow scope, you're going to miss out on a big part of the market. So I completely agree with that. And I wanted to touch. You guys both said some really good stuff about EMRs. Just in my experience, coming to the Hancock Wellness and Hancock Health, uh, gosh, back in 2011, you know, again, it wasn't as advanced as it is now in terms of the EMR and the ability to integrate. So for years we were struggling, and you hear the stories of people having a tough time even getting access to that, and that seems, I think, to be a little less problematic now. There's more recognition of people being able to get in the system and having a need to have that communication. And really, I mean, we were finding that is now where the doctor's workflow is. They're not going to do that many faxes. They're not going to, do the old school thing, and it's all within the EMR now. So we had to find a way to get in there, and so and we. Across MFA, there's so many great examples that of centers that are working within EMRs and having really good success. I have some places that have just talked about really exponential growth in their referrals just because they were able to get into the EMR, and have two-way communication. Usually it starts with some one-way communication where the referrals come into the fitness center and you get them and you try to make contact with the patient, and then communicating back to the doctor sometimes was the challenge. And to have that two-way, then to be able to communicate back and have at least some information flowing both ways. That's where it starts to really pick up, and I think we're seeing more of that progression of the evolution of EMRs and ability to do that. So I think there's tons of great examples of that out in our industry, and I think work just continues to be done. So I'm really encouraged on what I'm seeing in as far as the progression of that. I think in medical fitness, having that, you can track outcomes, but if you don't do anything with them, they're probably not that useful. But as soon as you start having communication back to the physician, here's some of the key statistics, key outcomes for your patients. You can communicate it as aggregate for a whole program of here's how effective our programs are, and that helps build the case for more people to get in. You can do the individual results, and that Thomas, you had touched on it just briefly. Setting new goals from those outcomes, and the ability to utilize that data to say, all right, here's where we started, here's where we are now. Compare those to some of the norms. Compare those to what your personal goals are, and adjust programs accordingly.
Yeah, that aggregate data management side of things too. Again, if you think about the EMR, the electronic medical record for medicine was not built for fitness professionals, which means that they don't have places to put data points that are related to exercise. And you either have to have that custom built or find your own solution for that, right? If you want to report on a population of people, it's something we've dealt with as speaking in my Pinnacle hat. Really the entire time that we've existed. We even built our own software we call My HealthWorks. It's meant to be a data aggregator for the things the electronic medical record struggles to keep track of and deal with. It probably seems so funny to the fitness professional that is not involved with the medical maybe it's just the medical fitness world or involved with getting referrals from medicine, to think that we'd spend so much time talking about the electronic medical record, but we have to. It's where medical providers document. It's where they spend most of their time. They sit in front of a screen with their face in the electronic medical record. And, even when we talked in previous podcast episodes with Lori Witzel and Amy Bantham about small changes they're making on the physician side, even just to get physical activity vital sign as part of the standard workflow, these are the kind of changes that actually do make a really big difference in how we get patients into medical exercise services. So it may seem funny to spend so much time on this, but it is an important point. For the sake of moving on, I'm just going to recite one piece of information that I mentioned last time about technology that, again, the digital fitness industry will generate about $15 billion in revenue this year. And it's estimated about half of Americans now utilize some form of digital health solution. I think thinking about what digital health means, I think we probably all would say that needs to be more focused on what we would call medical exercise. And that's certainly not what is encompassed under that $15 billion and 50% of Americans. We need to get better at doing that. And I'd like to segue is talking about how that prescription should look, like what medical exercise could be defined as. And I want to ask Jeff specifically to kick this question off, and I doubt that I'll have much to add beyond what he has to say, but let's see what happens. So Jeff, could you share really how does the actual exercise prescription compare for a medical fitness solution compared to as programming for like an athlete, and just take it from there. Go for it, Jeff.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite questions on earth.
Mhm.
And I'll put a quick plug in for the book that is being revised right now, the Medical Fitness Bible, with myself and Dr. John Bonnet, who's been on our podcast as a co-author, and several contributors, which would include you, Thomas, and hopefully you, David, as well, etc. But I go through in that book that there's several universal themes and universal algorithms that apply to everyone. And so now, as it relates to the answer to this question, let me actually just go back. I think it'd be easiest for me to answer this question by giving a quick history. And that is that when I was a student at Penn State and in my junior and senior years, and learning about this concept called periodization, which is just jargon that basically means make sure that you structure your program and think about the long term, the midterm, and then how do your individual sessions lead to your midterm goals and your long term goals. And there's way more to it than that, but it's just a way to structure and optimize your program. But you always learn it in exercise science programs as it relates to athletes and getting them ready for competition. And so a lot of people, I would suggest that most people think about periodization as it relates to athletes. They don't think about it for the general population, especially for those with chronic disease and musculoskeletal conditions. But then I'm involved in this really long study, and the participants were general population. And so I'm still a student, and I realized that, oh, this applies to the general population. And then when my first job out of college was at Duke University Medical Center's Diet and Fitness Center, which was medical fitness. That was we had medicine, nutrition, behavior, and fitness components. It's mostly class 1 and class 2 obesity, and therefore all the comorbidities, musculoskeletal conditions that accompany that. And I realized that, oh, this is a concept that applies across the board. Now, to get a little bit deeper into the answer to your question, people don't realize it, and I'm going to argue that it doesn't matter what you think your goals are. What's going to help you reach and exceed those goals are to improve the 4 primary ways that the body adapts to exercise. Be conditioning, become more conditioned so that you're not deconditioned. Strength, increase your strength. Lean muscle tissue, and power. And people think about power from an athletic standpoint, but we need power across the lifespan to do things like catch yourself from falling or move your foot more quickly from the gas pedal to the brake so that you don't get in an accident or something like that. So we need all 4 of those, and people don't realize that. And so I've just been really fortunate in my career to see how what we do for athletes applies to everyone across the board. And then going back to the Mount Sinai um, days, and a lot of the programming out there is very condition specific. It's this program for someone with type 2 diabetes, and this program for someone with hypertension, and this one for MS, this one for lupus, etc. And I didn't know enough and actually now in hindsight, it was actually um, I'm glad that I didn't know enough about condition specific programming. And so I just piggybacked off what I did at Duke, which was just put someone on a periodized program to improve their conditioning, strength, power, and hypertrophy. And lo and behold, that increased their fitness, and increasing their fitness ended up improving their health, their health biomarkers and stuff like that. So reduce their A1Cs or improve their hypertension or help their knee issue or their shoulder issue or something like that. And the last thing I'll say, even though I could go on forever, is that so the way I go about it and the way I really detail big time in the book is that you have this algorithm. You screen the person, you start with a screen, and then you move to the assessment, and then you initiate the program. And basically you just need to the initiation. Um, I like to go off of basically work alongside physical therapists for 20 years and have it kind of be like this very physical therapy like start point with 2 to 3 sets of 10, and it's lower volume, lower intensity, lower variety of exercise, etc., on purpose. So it's a way to just ease a person into the program, find their entry point, create a nice safe and trusting environment for them. In my experience, that typically lasts for about 3 weeks, give or take one, and then you put them on a strength and conditioning program. And the strength and conditioning program is designed to improve conditioning, strength, power, and lean muscle tissue. And then the last thing is every condition, no matter what it is, whether it's disease or musculoskeletal issues, comes with special considerations, precautions, and potential contraindications. And so the coach needs to learn those. I'm going to use my wife as an example. She has multiple sclerosis. So we're still going to use those algorithms. I'm still going to screen her, assess her, initiate the program by creating a nice, safe environment, and then put her on a strength and conditioning program. But she has multiple sclerosis. So I need to know what the precautions and contraindications are for that and insert them into the overall blueprint that I just described, which will be things like basically you don't want to get her to get overheated. So therefore, make sure just be extra sensitive to hydration before the session starts, during the session, after the session, longer rest periods between sets to let some of that heat and fatigue dissipate from her body. And also just, even maybe the exercise selection based on how she's feeling, and also a screening process going into the session. Hey, how do you feel today? Taking medications into consideration. Hopefully she didn't take the meds within the last hour or so, and that's not going to be an issue. So as you can see, I can go on forever, but hopefully I created a nice picture that the answer to your question is I don't really train people that much different than anybody else. I'm focused on the same general thing. Let's get them fit over the course of time at whatever pace that we can go, but just know your special precautions. I'm sorry, special considerations, precautions, and contraindications for whatever conditions they present with, and insert them into the program.
The Medical Fitness Podcast is brought to you in part by the Medical Fitness Association. Are you a professional in the medical fitness industry? As a member of the Medical Fitness Association, you'll unlock exclusive networking opportunities with top experts in the field. Access cutting-edge education to stay ahead of industry trends and best practices. Don't miss out on the chance to advance your career. Join the Medical Fitness Association today. Visit medicalfitness.org to become a member. That's medicalfitness.org.
Yeah, I love everything that you're going through right now. I mean, that's completely aligned with my thinking. And really, when you're talking about periodization, I think that runs parallel, or however you want to say it, to progression. It's really about progressing exercise. And I think I saw this throughout my career. While it's not a bad thing for somebody to stick with the same exact program if they're, coming consistently, that's not a bad thing. They're still getting some health benefit from not being sedentary and so forth. However, they're probably not maximizing and their time and being efficient with what they're doing, and they could get so much more out of it, and that's where the progression comes in, and periodizing and those sorts of things. So I think in a medical fitness center, you often see a greater, staffing model and knowledge base from the staff to be able to do those properly, and to take the time to do the pre-screening, and then go through an assessment and a prescription, and show the initial program, and walk people through and get them comfortable with that, and then hopefully they are coming back. They're coming consistently, but then they're coming back at least for maybe an 8-week reassessment, and to see where you are, and then reevaluate how to progress, and what now. Don't just stick with the same exact program for years on end, because you could be getting so much better benefit out of the time that you're spending doing this. Again, it's if you're physically active, you know, we know there's studies out there that talk about all-cause mortality, and the difference between being completely sedentary and just a little bit of activity is huge for somebody. But then, what else can you do for yourself? And especially for people with variety of comorbidities, chronic disease issues that are, fighting against those health issues. Well, we want to do as much as we can, right? So, I mean, some of these principles of exercise really come into play, and unfortunately, there's plenty of places that really you just, if you're going to a fitness center and you join, and you may not get anything at all, or you may get, an orientation on day one, and then, if you want anything else, you might be paying big bucks for it, or you have very little support. So I mean, I think some of this is, do we really believe in the ability to help people progress along their way, and health as an outcome? I mean, certainly there is a value to the services that we provide, and so that has to be all worked out on the operator side. But and so there's many models to do that. But again, is it something that we're and I think medical fitness as a whole is very much along the lines of helping people progress throughout their lifetime, and so I'll just stop there. And Thomas, I don't, you want to jump in?
Thomas, do you mind if I just real quick just interject? And I'll make this quick because I know we're also having to watch the clock. But yeah, I look at things as there's a continuum of optimization. There's optimal and there's suboptimal, and then there's like no good at all. And on that continuum, and you hit on it, David, the way I look at it is periodization is a way to optimize a program. So why not just start someone with what's optimal rather than, and I know that we don't live in a world that we're going to be able to do that all the time. There are different entry points, and sometimes, you got to go with the entry points, and then you gotta move them to something that's optimal. But ideally, we would want to start someone off with what's optimal. And then the other thing I wanted to say is, yes, exactly. Periodization has progression built into it. That's literally what periodization is about. And one of the things I've learned, at least in my experience, is people, it doesn't matter who you are or what age you are, people love to set personal records. And when you're progressing, it's because you're continually setting personal records. By definition, actually, you're always setting a new little personal record for yourself. And that's the reason why you're progressing. And that then means that periodization as a model or as a concept has motivation built into it, because then it leads to intrinsic motivation. And then the last thing I'll say is you hit on reflection and feedback and stuff like that. You don't realize it now, David, because you haven't seen the revision of the Medical Fitness Bible, but that's actually part of my algorithm is screen, assess, initiate, progress, and then get feedback, reflection. And the feedback is also to close that loop with clinicians as well, not just with the client, but feedback, progression, and improvement. That is the algorithm in the book. So you hit on everything without even knowing that it's in my revised book.
Well, and I'll even say from a business standpoint of running your business, the whole idea of progressing somebody, it's going to keep them coming back. You said the intrinsic motivation,
Exactly.
it makes people, see these results and want to continue. And so, we looked at it also from we kind of called it the member journey, and we wanted to increase touch points and make sure that we were, staying engaged with people, and they were seeing the results they wanted to, and that was going to keep them coming back. So from a business standpoint, it makes sense as well.
Exactly.
I think the only thing that I would add, Jeff, you've talked so much about what the optimal exercise prescription looks like. And I think that's the most important element to this. What I'll say from my perspective is almost a stereotype, and people don't like stereotypes, but I'll have to just tell you it's from my experience that when prescription on the medical side is suboptimal, it's underdosed. And like if you go to your fit VP principles, frequency, intensity, time type, volume, progression, whatever it is on the medical side, when it goes wrong, it's underdosed. And it's the comfort zone. It's the fear of prescribing an optimal program to this group of people. What I love about Jeff, like kind of what you outlined, is that the prescription shouldn't look a lot different than the athlete. When things go wrong for the athlete, it could be all kinds of things. I doubt it's often underdosing it, but I wouldn't try to stereotype what goes wrong there, because I think, again, it could just be all kinds of stuff. In medicine, when it's done wrong, it's underdosing. It's the idea that move more is enough. And I just know that it has to go beyond that. So we'll move on to our next question. The next really to field for all of us, maybe David, I'll let you kick it off just based on your position and experience. But what are some examples of best practice medical fitness programs that really walk the walk?
Man, with the limited time, it's going to be hard to go into too many best practice examples. But what I would say in what we see now, we've grown our certified medical fitness facility program to 52 centers across the U.S. and Canada, and those facilities, some of them have been doing it for 15 plus years, and others have just been getting into it. But those are the facilities that have implemented the best practices from the full medical fitness model that we publish. And so I think those, we have those all over the place. And what's really interesting is, and I think we've mentioned this in other podcasts, but MFA started with hospital-based medical fitness centers. And what we're seeing now is more and more of other types of fitness centers. So, for example, YMCA's are looking at this now, and community rec centers, senior living centers, university based, I mean, across the board. So it's I think there's over time been a misconception that's been that you have to be a hospital based facility to be a medical fitness center, and that's just simply not true. And we're seeing it more and more. The interest is there because of the way to differentiate yourself when you're putting in this model that really I mean, commercial facilities can do this. Yes, it involves a different operation style and model than what most are used to doing, but there's some simple parts to it, and there's some things that take a little more effort. A lot of people come to me and say, shouldn't you have a certification for your commercial facilities? I say, yeah, we do. It's the exact same model, and people are doing it. So part of me really wants to get the message out that these best practices, they're all across the industry. They're not just in the hospital-based ones, and that's what one of the primary things that we're doing at MFA is we're educating people on how to put these into place, and between our events where we're talking about some of these and the programs that are going on to our publications. It's I work with people every single day, it seems like now, on questions about how does this really look. And so I mean, yeah, to give the examples of the best practice, I mean, there are so many out there. I would say, um, we hear of new things that people are doing all the time when they're presenting at a conference on some of their programs. I think last year's summits, we heard all kinds of great things. The one that sticks out in my head is facility that started using dietitians to within just about every single program, and part of that was the nutrition is absolutely vital for optimal results, but it's also allowing a new way of billing for services. And whether that's still as a full self-pay cash based service with the additional personnel that you can build in, or if it's within a reimbursement model. I mean, that's there too. So I think um, whether it's coming and interacting with people at some of these events, and hearing about it. I think I'll always point to our certified facilities. We've had over 100 facilities go through this over the span of the time that it's been around, and these are the facilities that just get it and have said, all right, we're taking on the full model, and we know this can help our business, but it also can help our members, and it can set us apart as doing things the right way.
Yeah. I I would like to share just two really quick examples. The first being, it's actually funny you didn't mention this, David, but I was thinking this is who you were going to talk about, is Hancock. I think if I was going to give an example of a group that's doing a really good job with community engagement, the idea that the medical wellness center or medical fitness center is part of what that community is engaged in as a central feature of the medical system, is really hard. It's a really hard thing to do. And I feel like Hancock has done a really good job of that in making it really accessible to people. The other example I want to give is a physical therapy group, actually in upstate New York, way upstate New York, almost Canada. We actually flew into Montreal to visit these guys, and drove south across the border back into the United States, in Plattsburgh, New York. There's a physical therapist owner named Elizabeth Pearl that's running a private practice. She expanded the space herself, and is doing a medical fitness program that right now, as secondary revenue to her physical therapy business, makes her over $30,000 a month. That's run by a fitness professional, generates data on program outcomes, and has people doing resistance training and cardiovascular exercise, not just as like the graduate PT program, in the traditional sense of like, keep doing your PT exercises in our clinic, but really expanding on that to focus on, okay, your injury is part of a physical health picture that we can address as part of your overall health, really. And that looks like starting a full body progressive exercise program they're just doing a really good job at getting people into that as part of their service in a clinic that does not have a big footprint. So a unique model that they've rolled out really successfully, and I'd want to shout out as something that's possible. So, Jeff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
real
know we're
quick,
running out of time,
actually,
so go ahead, Dave. I'm sorry.
since you mentioned Hancock, I am very proud of that. I spent 9 years at that system, and we built the 3 facilities, and way back when we said we're going to improve not just our membership, but of our entire community's health. And I forget what we were ranked for the state county rankings for health, but it wasn't great. And last I checked, I think Hancock County, just east of Indianapolis, is now number 2 or 3, somewhere in there. I mean, the progress that's been made, and so when I got there, we really laid the foundation. We built a lot of programming and developed a lot of things. They've taken it. If you came to the annual conference, you hear Joel Hungate talking about the direct to employer contracting that they're doing, and taking this to the next level. You can spread it throughout the community, and so there's so many great examples of that type of work being done, and Hancock continues to just really innovate. And so I do have a ton of pride in that. But I mean, the great thing is I get to go around the country seeing all of these happen. I've been to Plattsburgh. It's you know tough to get to, but yeah, great things happening in all kinds of little nooks. But Jeff, go ahead. I know we're running out of time.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to say is that with my fitness professional hat on, because I come at this from a little bit different perspective, I just think that I'm glad that you mentioned Pearl Physical Therapy, Thomas, because I would love for that story to get out. I think that the listeners should, like, it's just words coming, they're just hearing this stuff. I think it's huge. I think it's absolutely huge that a small practice like that is doing over 30,000 a month, and therefore, and at least the last thing I want to say is I would love to the 3 of us or whatever at some point, let's talk a little bit about more granularly about things that should happen within a clinic. Like the bottom line is we need to collaborate, and that's my last words. And what does that mean? It means uh, in services, and just getting involved, and fitness trainers training the clinicians so they can understand better what's going on, and not being these siloed situations, but we need to collaborate. And I would love to have an upcoming podcast where we get more granular about that and talk about what does the now getting underneath the roof, what does an ideal situation look like. So I'll end it with that because I know we're running out of time, but
Great.
yeah,
Yeah.
great discussion.
Yeah. And the last thing that we didn't talk about today, but it's kind of like we can answer the question ourselves right now, is does medical fitness need to grow in its reach, and what needs to happen if this is to become a reality? And I think we all know the answer is yes, it needs to grow in its reach. And I think, for me, even thinking about our future podcast episodes, I'm going to do this tomorrow. I'm going to record tomorrow with Dr. Rob Newton. He's actually going to be in a different day than me, even of the week, because of the time change from here to Western Australia, where he lives. But I'm going to ask him this question. What's going to happen if medical fitness or exercise medicine is going to become a reality that's more widespread? And that's really, I think, what you'll hear as a theme in our season, this 3rd season of Medical Fitness Podcast. We really intend to answer that question. So that's what I've got, guys. Thanks for jumping on and joining me on this.
Great conversation. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, well said to close us, because that is everything that we need to talk about. How does this expand and grow the reach? But yeah, thanks guys. Great talk.
Thanks so much.
This episode of the Medical Fitness Podcast is brought to you by the Medicine, Rehab, and Fitness Institute. The MRFI has been co-founded by medical, rehab, and fitness practitioners who see the medical necessity in getting people to be more active and fit. There is a sleeping giant of opportunity to building a more active population, an opportunity which lies in a more effective medical referral pathway to exercise programs and professionals equipped to serve that pathway. To learn more about our services and how we're working to make this a reality, visit mrfinstitute.org. That's mrfinstitute.org.